Let's look into your first steps in China. Well, you already said you were,
Mm.
quite appealing to the Chinese
Mm,
diaspora in
mm, mm,
Australia.
mm, mm.
But at some point,
Mm.
you got quite popular in
Yeah,
China.
we
I
did.
mean,
We,
we
we
have
had
to
a we had a
address the bear
we
in
had
the
a
room at some
couple of
point.
moments there. Look, it's I'm always love that saying. The harder you work, the luckier you get. And I keep kind of having to emphasize that we're a really small company, and we have really limited budget that we can spend. It's not a massively profitable company. It's barely a profitable company in the context of the amount of investment that's been made by our family over a long period of time. Um, but it's amazing how that can help focus your mind. And I somewhat joke that I keep saying to our people, we're a 96-year-old startup. We keep having to think and reinvent what it is that we do and how we present. And probably, call it 5 years ago, slightly longer than that, but in that sort of half-decade space, we had no money for marketing, literally. Like, we were out. And we started to explore how do we use influencers, because that was a nice, cheap way of getting some notoriety. And we'd worked a little bit with a Hong Kong influencer, an Iron Chef, would you believe? And he's still very good friends with us. We love him to death and still catch up with him. And he was our first sort of taste. And we had some real success in Hong Kong in terms of gaining traction with this gentleman. And then we started asking around about, do you know someone? Do you know someone who knows someone? When he said, can we give you something to give to them? And we had some friends who knew a very famous Chinese actor. And he had a very beautiful girlfriend. And I'm not going to go into the pluses and minuses because it's sort of a tragic romantic story, but it was absolutely fascinating. And he gave his girlfriend one of our little products, our little bear, Bobby, and she blogged about it. And we didn't know any of this was happening. I'm not going to pretend for one moment we had a clue that what was going on. And she blogged about it, and all of a sudden our webpage went into meltdown. Our little sales channel went, and we were producing these at a rate of about 100 or 200 a day because they're sort of filled and finished on site. And we have this literal little sewing circle of lovely local ladies who'd finish him off, and we put 100 up online because that's what we'd made that day, and within minutes, gone. And our phone started ringing, and someone would in a very strong Chinese mainland accent say, "Hello, bear," and we go online and hang up, and the phone would ring immediately, and it would just not stop ringing constantly. People looking for this bear, and it was. We started trying everything. I was starting to get obsessed. I was living in Hong Kong at the time, which was really, really lucky for reasons I'll make clearer later. But I started to set an alarm for 2 o'clock in the morning in Hong Kong time and post these 100 bears online. And still, within 10 minutes, they're gone. We couldn't keep up with demand. And it was this wonderful, horrible problem to have where you just have this outraged price and you have no idea what's going on. We thought we were being hacked. Our IT guys going, we just got no idea what's happening. And people we'd had in the month of January when there's more than 1 million hits on our website. Now, again, at that point, we were significantly smaller than we are now. We're still relatively small, but back then we were cottage industry stuff. And we have no idea because no one was telling us. And then finally, one of my friends said, "Hey, you got to see this." And we started to understand what was unraveling, what was happening. And we started to get some really interesting phone calls from the Wall Street Journal, from Bloomberg magazine, from Fortune magazine, from I'm probably not as ambitious as I used to be, but I'd sort of imagined that I'd hoped that maybe I would be the first person in my family to have their little pixelated picture in the Wall Street Journal. Turns out I'm not. It was Bobby. And again, for us, it was madness. It was insane. It threw everything that we had into a loop. we started to get, that was the beginning of the massive growth in visitation, and we would have people crowding into our shop, and there's this amazing story where we had all these people trying to, literally surging forward, trying to grab one of our little bears off the shelf that was, but we had to put it behind the counter, and literally our whole point of sale was pushed forward. Like it came off its foundations and was pushed like a foot backwards, and all of our staff had to sort of leap out of the way, and it was it was literal madness in the context. And my mantra number one is we're just a lavender farm. Like what is this madness? And so it's this business that somehow engages beautifully, and it's both a salutary lesson on what you can do in order to grow your business and be successful. People sort of say to us, you're so lucky that this worked. And our Bobby was one of 250 products that we'd created using lavender. And I always love it when people come and say to us, oh, you know what you should do? Because there's the rare person who can come up with something that's entirely new in the context of what we've tried to do. We've tried a lot of things, and we've had one product that's just done amazingly. And we love it. And the problem for us then became how to keep up, how not to lose this amazing opportunity that we've been presented with. And we had to go through it. And as I said, at the time I was living in Hong Kong, and it actually, ironically, allowed me, even though I was so far away, it allowed me to look at our supply chain and redo almost our entire supply chain that allowed us to supply. And then we had to look at our manufacturing capabilities. This is all great when you have the luxury of time and space, but when it's coming at you constantly, it's almost impossible.
And this was all because of one blog post?
One blog post.
In China?
Yeah. And as I said, it can be, you can view it through any lens you like. We've heard the "you're so lucky" thing so many times, but the reality is we have been positioning ourselves so many times. That was one of 50, 100, 1,000 things that we had tried. We loved it worked. We wished, honestly, and I mean this genuinely, it was be a bit calmer because it put a lot of shocks into our system. We're past that now. I mean, as I said, more than 5 years, 7 years down the track since that time. We're a much better business. We're a much fitter business. We're a much more flexible business in terms of what we do. But at the time, it was nightmarish. But you take the opportunities when they're there. You don't ever turn them down. You don't ever say, look, I'm sorry. No, in my opinion. And the thing for us, as I said, it was just about creating something. Bobby wasn't an accident. Didn't just show up fully formed on our doorstep. It was something that we worked through. For as simple as the name is, I spent over a month working through possible combinations of names because, God forbid, you end up with something that's a borderline insult, and when it translates into Chinese, into Mandarin, into Cantonese, and it literally working with people to understand what it is and how does it work and how does it become us, and the simplicity of the outcome. Bobby the British-style bear, it was part of that alliterative piece, and this isn't a story that's widely understood or widely known, and I think this is, you'll criticize my terrible Chinese accent, but Bobby, when we translated it, was roughly like Bok Bei, which is again very roughly about a knowledgeable traveller from a faraway place who brings you knowledge, and that to me was just magic. Like how that actually fits is beautiful, because that's how we view ourselves. It's this faraway place that can bring you something very, very powerful, really, really lovely, that you may not be able to do elsewhere. Now, there are lavender farms elsewhere, but I think just the magic, particularly of Tasmania, and I always sort of mentally compare it sort of to the Cherry Blossom Festival in Japan. You've got this moment in time. You've got to get your timing right. The peak lavender season is really only about 1 week out of 52 in a year. If you get your timing right on a perfect day, it can be magical. And it's you have to work hard to get there. You have to work hard to understand, to experience it at its best. But if you can get there, it's just magical. It's one of the most beautiful things you can see in your life.
Cool.